You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 96. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how to stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. If you're not an alcoholic, but fed up with saying yes to a drink when you mean to say no, you're in the right place. Hi all, welcome back to the podcast as we start our way through October. And if you're doing Sober October, I hope things are going well for you. Take a listen to last week's episode if you haven't had a chance. You can tell it's the autumn. The air was so crisp this morning. It's so pretty outside. Anyway, what I want to talk about today are unexpected events. Now, this is life. Right? There's only so much we can plan for ourselves. I talk a lot about having control, gaining control of your decisions, making plans, making decisions ahead of time. But to the best of our ability, there are always going to be these unexpected events that happen. Friends drop by. We get invited to spontaneous gatherings. It could even be that we forget to put something in our diaries. How often have you done that? I remember once, quite funny to think about, we'd actually booked tickets to go to a Burns night with the Burns Club in London. So it was going to, a lovely thing. We bought tickets and so on. And I had completely and utterly forgotten about this. I mean, it just dropped from my head. And there we were sitting at home and I was just about to start making dinner. When up pops a calendar reminder, Burns night supper. I was like, oh my goodness. I looked at the time. We threw some clothes on. It's kind of a posh do. So I kind of threw a posh frock on, headed over with the tube and so on, trains. And actually, as it always happens, we missed, I think we got off at the wrong, no. What we did was we got on the wrong train. There were two trains coming within 5 minutes of each other. We got on the wrong train. It just took a slightly different route, which was fine. It wasn't like we were just another station in London. And we arrived with the skin of our teeth. Yeah, panting and out of breath. So it's not good. Not good sometimes, these unexpected events. Anyhow, that's what we're going to talk about today. So again, my premise is that you have looked ahead and planned, maybe better than I used to do. But then circumstances are working out differently to how you expected, right? So then let's look at what happens when it comes to our drink plans. Maybe perhaps you've planned to be alcohol free because you thought you were just going to be at home alone, no reason to drink, just going to have a cup of tea and chill in front of the TV, and then your spouse's plans change and lo and behold, they're there too. And then, right, this is then the question the brain goes to, are we going to stick with our original plan? Or perhaps you're going to a restaurant, got your plan, and then there's a one-off special. There's an offer for a wine that you're really intrigued by. Or maybe you're going down the pub, just popping in. Maybe you've got a plan for a drink and that's fine. And then you see someone you've known since school and you've always drunk with them. You haven't seen them for ages. And they said, they've got all the time. Come on. Let's catch up, right? So this is the premise that basically events and circumstances that you planned your drinking around, that they change. They're not as predicted. And then what do? Right? You have a plan for a circumstance that no longer exists. Now, what I see happen a lot in these situations, in these circumstances, is we first go to, well, this wasn't what I planned. This wasn't what I planned on happening. This is now going to be a lot harder. My plan doesn't fit this. My plan doesn't fit. My drink plan doesn't fit my life. I'd have planned differently if I'd known, right? And then we kind of excuse ourselves that that's what we want to do, right? It's things like, if I had known I was going to see this old friend, I'd have planned 3 glasses of wine. And because I would have planned that and she's here and that's what I wanted, then I'm going to have that right now, right? So we make the wine the thing that we're going to do in that situation. We go ahead and break the plan based on what's happening with the circumstance because that's what we would have planned, right? We sort of justify it in that way. We reason it's okay to change what we had predicted because the circumstances are different and we feel very justified in this. But I want you to look at the opposite. This is a great tactic. If ever you find you're struggling, suggest the opposite circumstance to yourself. So I want to look at a situation where the circumstances would change and where it would be easy for you to not drink, right? Because we normally say, oh, the circumstances change and now it's really hard to not drink. Let's look at where they change and where it's easy to not drink. I want you to think about a one-off situation where maybe your favorite star, favorite singer, person you admire, writer, politician, for all I know, doesn't matter who it is, they were to come by and you had the opportunity to hang out with them, but there would be no wine available. Well, that would be easy, right? You wouldn't even want the wine. You wouldn't even think about it. Now, I used to say, I don't know why I can't change this, right? I seem to be doing this against my own will. I make a decision. I'm not going to have wine tonight, and here I am drinking the wine. But here was the truth of the matter. And this was a really handy question to ask in the moment. I knew that if Terry Hall, sadly passed now, but lead singer of the Specials, if he had walked in right then, any of those junctures, and said, hi, Anna, let's chat, I would have been able to stop immediately. It only feels like you're out of control because of unconscious patterning. So I want you to see it's totally possible to change what you drink in whatever circumstance you find yourself in. So when you see yourself saying, I'm going to drink now because that's, the circumstance had changed. Of course, I have to drink more than I planned. I want you to see that the opposite is possible too. It's just a story. A change in circumstance means nothing until we ascribe meaning to it through our thoughts about it. And what's the reason why we decide in those scenarios, in these unexpected events, that we can change our plans? Well, it's very simple. It comes down to how we feel always. Now, typically what I see is that we go to deprivation and frustration. Oh, if only I'd known. And it's not what I would usually do, but, oh, this isn't fair, but, oh, that sort of woe is me, right? We convince ourselves then, after we have kind of floundered for a bit, we convince ourselves that these are reasons for making a change to our plan, but really they're just excuses that our brains are latching onto to decide to do something that is more pleasurable in the moment than what we had planned. And you know this because think back to when this happened for you. We know we're doing this. We can call ourselves out. In retrospect, maybe even in the moment, we can see exactly why we're doing what we sort of justify. Yeah, well, I'm going to do this for this or this reason. But we can see, stepping back, that we're just having a convenient excuse placed in our way. So if you struggle with this, what we want to do is we want to pick an emotion that's going to fuel the actions we would want to have you take. Now, that is not going to be judgment. It's not going to be justification. Right? It's not going to be, why are you doing this again? Why are you changing your plans again? You're so lazy. That's just going to have you feeling out of control and reaching for the wine anyways, because you feel so bad. So if you're feeling at 6s and 7s, I want you to always go to curiosity first and foremost. Curiosity is a marvelous state to be in. It kind of has this sensation of lightness. I like to think of it as kind of like, when you see a tennis player, not that I'm a tennis player, but when you see them playing a match, they have to be ready to do one of many moves, right? They can go forward, back to the side, leap up in the air, dash forward, move a little bit, right? You see them on the balls of their feet kind of bouncing around. If you can go into that kind of state where you're just curious, you're just waiting to see what happens, it's going to stop you from taking a preordained route of action, right? It's going to stop you from going into excuseville, right? This is what we always do when this happens. The circumstance changes, so we have to change the plan, right? Curiosity will make you stop and think. It will have you asking questions. And here's a great question to ask yourself. I'll give you this one for free. In going through with my challenge, right, with this unexpected event that's happening, I'm going to stick with my drink plan. What version of myself am I becoming because of, not despite the challenge? That question always makes me feel intrigued. Because if you work on a challenge and you say, this is challenging, this is really, really challenging, maybe But what if it isn't? What if it's tremendous, right? Because you're doing what you're choosing to do with the difficult things. Who are you going to be if you complete the challenge? And who would you be if you were to give up, right? In your own eyes. Who are you going to be if that unexpected party happens and you're just going to stay with your drink plan of one glass of wine? Versus who are you going to be if you're going to say, oh, here we go, I'm going to have to change this because it's going to be impossible to have a good time with one glass of wine. Who will you be in both of those scenarios? Right? Because I want you to think about it. Whatever unexpected event you might be thinking about, it's not going to be the only one in your life. Right? It's not going to be the only time the circumstances change. In fact, as we're not predictors of the future, we never know what's going to happen. We may have kind of an idea, but we don't really know because people can just drop by. So I want you to consider that unexpected events could crop up often. In fact, they could be, you could expect to have quite a few unexpected events, right? And to be okay with that because it is okay. Here's where I go to with this, right? I always remind myself that my brain is going to come up with a story. In fact, it's always going to come up with stories. In any moment of my life, any arena of my life. And 9 times out of 10, unless you're really doing the work every minute of the day of managing your mind, the story may not be a good one, right? At least in terms of your long-term goals and at least to start with. As you become more attuned to seeing what's going on in your brain and directing it in the way you want, that ratio, that 9 out of 10 ratio will change. But at least to start with, you can expect that's where you're going to be. The point is, there is no right way. You get to choose. But I want you to see that when this happens, when this unexpected circumstance happens, it does not mean that you have to lock in to what you would have done, or it's not a reason to go into shoulding, right? I should have done this. I should have expected this. I should have planned this. Right? We just look at who we're becoming, what we want for ourselves, and whom we're going to honor. Are we going to honor ourselves, or are we just going to let ourselves kind of flip-flop in the wind every time something in our schedule changes? So being curious and alert can really help at these times. It can also help you tremendously if you're kind of on to yourself, right? Because when we justify changing our drinking based on changing circumstances, we can reach into our back pocket for some of those handy little excuses that we know so well. So let me give you an example of this. I know I have a story that when I get to a piece of work being about 95% done, my brain just has this tendency to just want to stop. So that's it. We're nearly finished. Nearly finished. Done a great job. We'll finish it up tomorrow. Right, you've done the hard thing, Anna. Finish it up tomorrow. And this has become quite a pattern. This did become quite a pattern for me, but now I recognize it. Right, I see it as my default. I see it as my go-to excuse if my circumstances change and somebody, drops by. My husband wants to go out to this thing, and I'm 95%. All right, yeah, done the hard bit. Right, but now I don't just go along with that. I will at least make the decision. 9 times out of 10, I will decide to finish up. I will decide to do what I had said I was going to do. I say to myself, your opinion is noted. I'm just going to keep going. All right. And then the key thing here is how I feel about myself in those moments takes my breath away. I see that it was a challenge. I see that I powered through with my brain. And then the pride I feel helps me to do it again and again. So there you go. I want you to think about how it feels when you don't let yourself get swayed by circumstances changing and when you stick to what you had planned for yourself. That's more a treat for your life and well-being than any couple of unplanned glasses could ever match. In terms of practical, tactical tips, here are a few. Firstly, you could choose to see the unexpected event as a brilliant opportunity to practice becoming the new you around alcohol. Because to change a habit, you need to practice doing the new thing more and more so that the new thing eventually becomes the go-to thing, right? So that drinking to plan becomes the thing that you do, then it becomes just the default, whatever else is going on. Unexpected circumstances can help with this. Another tip, you teach your brain over and over again that wanting isn't a good enough reason, because you have bigger and better plans for what you're going to use your brain to do rather than just blindly seeking out the reward to drink. Third, you could consider, if you want to be the person who thinks, well, I wasn't expected to go to the pub, so now I'm just going to have the wine as I'm here. Is that the type of person you want to choose to become? Right? Those are 3 tips there. Now notice what I didn't say. I didn't say you'll have to avoid or distract or freak out. You have to decide that what you decided in your plan was good enough, because then you learn how to make whatever you planned to be good enough, to decide that's enough for me. I planned 1 glass of wine. I'm going to have 1 glass of wine even though I'm now going out with these 2 friends I haven't seen for years. That if I plan to be alcohol free tonight, that's what I'm going to do, even if my best friend drops by with a bottle of wine to share. Because when we do this, we're working with the real part of our brain that has our best interests in mind. And then we just have to go to work to practice making it right, whatever happens. I want to offer, it doesn't really matter what the week brings. It doesn't matter what unexpected circumstances happen. If you decide in advance that what you have decided is right and good for you and it is enough, that's going to get you out of the want and the desire. That's going to get you out of thinking that more alcohol makes an experience good or better. It doesn't. It just makes it different. It's a handy thought to have. If you're thinking, oh, it's going to be so much worse without the wine, it's just going to be different. Right? It's just going to be different. Maybe it's a good different. I want you to think as well, if you do struggle with this in that moment, when it comes down to honouring yourself, I want you to ask, what if you can just be here? Right? What if I can just be here with whatever I'm experiencing? That's just really good for me. So I'll be connecting with myself. I'll be learning about my emotions. I'll be allowing my feelings to be processed in a very healthy way. This is actually very good for me. Right? So that can trump any feelings of, I wish I'd known better. Should have planned more. Now, maybe this is just perfect for you. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that I always know what's good for me if I listen to myself, if I do this work consistently. So you want to start listening to yourselves too. Start trusting your gut. Start trusting your instinct and being willing to do what it takes. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you so much for listening. And if this resonates, if you're fed up, being fed up of how you act around alcohol, let's talk. I help people like you change your relationship with alcohol. It is so good. If you're interested in that, go to 90dayslater.co and click on the box to book a call. All right, I'll see you next week. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. And we do it in 90 days. The effect is permanent. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.